Well, hello and welcome to Distinctions Live Talks. And once again, any non-members with us can join the RPS at a discounted rate. Details later. Now, my name is Peter Hayes, and let's get straight to our guest with a series of quick-fire questions. Name?
Will Cheung,
Age?
62,
Occupation?
freelance journalist and photographer.
What sort of schoolboy were you?
Geeky and inattentive.
What sort of photographer are you?
An enthusiastic, passionate one, but an amateur at heart.
Film or digital?
Digital.
Colour or black and white?
Oh, black and white.
Take images or make them?
Both. I take them and then create them and make prints.
What equipment do you use?
I use a range of equipment, including Nikon, Olympus, and Fujifilm.
Favourite camera?
At the moment, because I use a lot of cameras, it's the Fujifilm GFX 50R, which is a medium format camera.
Favourite location?
East coast of England.
In camera or fiddle diddle afterwards?
More in camera than fiddle diddle, but fiddle diddle is inevitable.
Which pioneers do you think have influenced you most?
Bill Brandt, Irving Penn.
What's your favourite saying?
Every day's a school day.
Single images or projects?
Both, but I'm a big fan of projects, as we'll see.
So what's your next project?
I'll let you know when I know.
We've done extremely well there, but I'll have to dock you 1 point because every photographer should have a new project in mind, as you know full well. Will, good evening, how are you?
Good evening, very well, thank you, Peter.
Were you really a geeky schoolboy?
I guess I was. I mean, I was with a group of lads who are slightly geeky. We like things like Star Trek and Monty Python. And certainly I was inattentive, and on all my reports, as far as I can remember, the same words reoccurred, which were, could do better, could do better, could do better.
Your parents must have been delighted. Now, we've discovered quite a lot about you already, but let's go back to your school days. You've just left primary school, you're helping out in your father's restaurant, and a waiter shows you something rather marvellous. What was it?
Yeah, it was a bit strange to start with, but he was, and don't take this the wrong way, but he's fiddling underneath the bedclothes. And I wondered what was going on. And basically what he was doing, he was loading his Patterson film tank, his developing tank. He didn't have a darkroom, didn't have a changing bag, so that's what he did. And he was a keen photographer, and he showed me how to process a film. So all these magical chemicals and all the rest of it, 15 minutes later, the film was out, and you could see the reverse image, and that got me hooked.
It must have been magical at that early age.
Absolutely, and of course there were no things such as internet, and I didn't have any people who are photographers around me. So seeing it done for real like that was amazing, and that's what inspired me to do more photography when I got the chance.
So what inspired you to go forward after that moment in the restaurant? How did you progress?
I progressed a matter of coincidences, I guess, because I had a camera which my dad gave me. He brought it back from Berlin after the war. It was a folding roll film camera, not very good. And he had bought an SLR to replace it. So it basically cascaded down to me. So I started shooting 120 roll film on this folding camera. I don't know how I could afford the film, to be honest, but I remember shooting film, taking it to local booths, and then plaguing the hell out of the shop assistants there, hopping from one foot to the other, waiting for the films to come back. Because in those days, it used to take quite a while. And that's how basically I progressed my hobby, by using a folding 120 camera.
And it must have taught you to be disciplined.
It taught me to be disciplined. It taught me to enjoy black and white as well. And it taught me by learning mistakes is a good way of learning. Messing up is a good way to learn, I found.
Now, of course, you're self-taught, but you did get it fairly early into the masters, such as Bill Brandt, for example.
Yeah, I mean, Bill Brandt, his work, related to me very nicely, because he used contrast and he kept his tones to a minimum. He did some amazing work with the kit he had. I mean, there were all sorts of projects he did, the miners up north, the nudes on Burning Gap Beach. And his work just related to me very strongly, and that he got me enthused from very early on, and I tried to copy his style. So I think we all need to develop a style. So his was one I went for, and it worked for me.
And you also had lots of books, the Masters of Contemporary Photography, didn't you? Which now cost a fortune. but in those days must have cost you quite a bit as well, these books.
Well, in those days, yeah, I looked at the price of these when I photographed them. They were £1.95 each, which in those days I think was about the same price as an LP, and several pints of beer, of course, because the beer was about 20p a pint there. But I enjoyed these books, and I still got them. And they include some masters. I mean, Dwayne Michaels, you see there at the top there, but they include people like Mary Ellen Mark, Art Kane, Annie Leibovitz. And these books connected with me, as well as magazines, of course, because, as I mentioned, there was no internet. So how did you find information? It was books and magazines.
And of course, Irving Penn was another big hero, wasn't he?
Yeah, and the same thing as with Brandt. The way he used composition inspired me. He broke the so-called rules, in inverted commas. You know, he used his frame really intelligently. He was another black and white worker, which is probably the reason I'm a black and white enthusiast. But his compositions were incredible. And people like Penn, Haverden, Ansel Adams, the Westerns, Breton and Edward, all those guys, certainly in the early days I couldn't get enough of them, basically.
Now, you once said you see in black and white. What do you mean by that?
And that is probably still true, I think, because, you know, obviously we all shoot colour, we all shoot raw format. But I still think when I see a picture in my head, I'm imagining the finished version in black and white. That's despite, by the way, these colour pictures behind me, which are all part of the lockdown. But I think I pre-visualise better in black and white than in colour. And I think that is my upbringing with the Masters photography we've mentioned.
Now, at 17, you buy your first proper system camera. What was it?
I bought a Canon FTBN, which at the time was big news. This is early 70s. It was around the same sort of time I also set up my first darkroom. And that was a great time, you know, going to the local photo shop, buying developer, and basically taking over the family bathroom to make my own prints. But the Canon FTBN was the one that got me going. I bought it with a 50mm 1.8 lens. And of course, for years, but I couldn't afford to buy anything else. So I bought that on a hire purchase agreement. And I just used that and basically worked with that lens. It was a great discipline, just having one lens to use.
And were you on your own, or did you have any mates also interested in photography?
I mean, largely I was on my own. There was one guy who was at school who was keen photographer, and he developed some of my films. And actually, he did such a bad job. It's part of the reason I decided to do my own. I mean, there were developers. I'm sure many of the listeners will know. A developer called D76 from Kodak, and you can use it over and over and over again. But he used it so many times. The negatives I got were so thin and scratched to hell. So I started processing my own films. But largely, I learned on my own. I learned from books. I learned from magazines. And as I said earlier, I learned from basically messing up.
Now, let's have a look at one of your images now. The first one is called Holiday Homes, which is actually from your associate panel. Now, this really is graphic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the first pictures where they had to print properly, if that makes sense. Because in a chemical darkroom, the control tones, you know, you bought the contrast of paper to suit the image you had in mind, but also you use things like bits of cardboard, wire, fingers, blue tack, wherever it might be, to control the tonality within an image. And this is one of the first ones where, and you've probably read it from a magazine, where I used bits of card to basically burn in the sky, burn in the foreground, but actually keep detail in other parts of the image. And this was part of my associate panel, which I applied for in 1982. And I was lucky enough to get my associate at the first attempt.
And of course, we ought to emphasize in those days, no such thing as Photoshop.
No, absolutely. It's all chemical. And I worked hard on my darkroom skills. I had, when I moved to my first house, I had a room dedicated to darkroom. So I was fortunate in that respect. But I worked hard on my darkroom. And yeah, you're right, there's no Photoshop. And every print was individual. Every time you made a mess, it cost you money. So that's a good way to learn, actually, just to, be careful, work hard at your technique, obsess a bit, I suppose, is how you would put it now.
And then you joined your first camera club. What was that like?
Yeah, I joined Colchester Camera Club when I was 18. To be fair,
come off the slide now and get back to Will. So what was it like then in Colchester Camera Club?
It was interesting because I went there, and coincidentally, it's one of those newcomer evenings, and there were two other 18-year-old lads at the same time who I didn't know. and we walked in. We were made very welcome. I remember the president showing me his collection of Leica M's, which I've never even touched until that point.
You must have been amazed at that.
I was absolutely staggered. And the thing is, he said, go take it and use it. It's a practical evening as well as a welcome. And there's a young lady sitting there in front of some real hot photo flood lamps. We know what sort of temperatures they used to kick out. Another guy called Bill, he had a Nikon F with a 250 frame back. And he said to me, just shoot pictures with it. I thought, great. So I did join Colchester. The two lads I joined with to start with, they didn't last long, to be fair. I stayed with Colchester for a little while. And then I realised it probably wasn't for me because they did a lot of audio-visual work and I preferred print. So me and a friend set up another club in a town called Hadley in Suffolk. It's kind of a drinking club, but also a photographic club. And a few of us turned up every week. We set ourselves challenges and we'd come back with prints the following week and we showed each other. So that worked really well because it was an informal club. There were obviously no meetings, no competitions, but we sat and chewed over technique and looked at each other's pictures. I learned a lot from that.
Now, you say you're an amateur photographer with a pro streak, but actually you've almost always earned your living from the business one way or another, haven't you?
Yes, indeed. I mean, when I left school, I was not bright enough to go to university, so I ended up in a job creation scheme. I worked at the local police station, did some other things, and eventually got a job at a photographic wholesalers, thanks to a friend of mine, who's still a friend of mine. And that's basically, I was dealing with professionals. We were selling film, wedding albums, frames, and such like to the local pros within East Anglia. So I was still living in Colchester, but it's a warehouse job. It was moving boxes.
Well, let's go on to your second image now, which is called Two Boats. Of course, film, dramatic, fantastically grainy actually, which adds to the atmosphere. And this, of course, is from your fellowship panel. Indeed.
I mean, I went for my fellowship panel in 1983. In other words, straight afterwards, after my associate panel. I think when you're young, you just think you're indestructible. You do things like that. Maybe I shouldn't have done, but I did go for it. I worked hard at it. It was
so does that mean you got your associate and your fellowship in 12 months?
I believe so.
Don't try this at home, everyone. Not many people can do that. Well, that really is quite something.
I did obsess about it. I worked, very hard at it. It was my fellowship panel was on the East Coast, which is where I used to live. That's Essex, Suffolk, and Norfolk. And I used to spend a lot of weekends driving up and down the coast with my cameras. I used to like using wide-angle lenses a lot. I used to shoot with a red filter on the camera because, of course, red filters in those days with black and white film gave you daunting skies, which for many people were too strong, but I liked that. And I like working hard at the angles with a wide-angle lens. The thing is, with a wide-angle lens, it is that maximum. If you're not close enough, if the picture's not good enough, you're not close enough.
Well, like this picture here, of course.
Yeah, with a wide-angle lens, and I was virtually underneath the boat and just waiting for the sky to get right.
Well, let's come off the slide now. So you can tell from that picture, really, how you learned about cropping from the greats of the past and weren't afraid to get in really close.
And I think that's something we can all learn from still. And I still work at cropping very hard. In Lightroom, I do any number of virtual copies and try different crops because you never know how it can improve a picture until you try it. And using virtual copies is so convenient now in softwares like Lightroom.
Now, what's I going to ask you? Oh, yeah. You then became a technical writer, didn't you, on Practical Photographer? But now you edit the Photography News, which goes out to 500 camera clubs. So you're as much a writer as a photographer these days.
I'm very much a writer, because in the true sense, I call myself an amateur photographer. In the true sense, I am, because I actually don't take pictures for money. I do not invoice for jobs. What I do is invoice for producing a magazine, and I fell into journalism. I have an O level in English language. That's all I have. I don't have a degree in journalism or anything untoward like that. I fell into the job, and simply because when I was working at the warehouse, enjoying it, having a good time, I had a company car, I had good responsibility, but I wanted to do something else. And my partner at the time encouraged me to apply for a job on practical photography. It was advertised in the back by a guy called Richard Hopkins, who is still a close friend of mine. And my partner sent off the letter. Literally, I didn't do a thing apart from sign it. I had 2 interviews, and I got offered a job as technical writer on practical photography for a company called EMAP, and I moved up to Peterborough. So I started as technical writer there. And I have asked Richard actually since, because I had no writing qualifications, and he had plenty of applicants who did. He said, I said, Richard, why did you give me a job on practical? And he said to me, he said, well, what I can see in you is that you had a passion for the hobby, basically. You know, we can encourage you to write, we can give you courses on how to improve your writing. But one thing I can't do is improve your passion. And it was great to hear. I have to say, it was fantastic to hear.
Too true. And of course, you had a bit of a surprise, didn't you? Because you were sent to the odd launch in London and saw some surprising things.
Yeah, as technical writer, and Richard didn't like going to London and enjoying free beer, but to me, it was really novel. You know, I was basically a country boy. I hadn't been to London that often. And I remember my first event was going down to Dorchester in London, and walking in, it was, free champagne when you walked in? Like, wow. And this was a breakfast, by the way. And then we got shipped off to, I think it was Shepperton Studios. It was an Olympus camera launch. And I remember we got on the coach to be shipped from the hotel to the venue. And on the back row were all these blokes in suits. You know, they were suited and booted, ties, waistcoats, whole thing. Then I looked closely and I realised there were people like Reg Mason, who was editor of Amateur Photographer. There was Victor Blackman, who, as a reader of AP, he was the columnist. You know, I chose my black and white developer because of Victor Blackman. And these guys were on the rear seat. And I thought, God, these are my heroes. And there I was. I think I had a tie on, but it wasn't a very good one. I had a tatty shirt, probably not a very nice jacket. And I was dealing with people that, you know, I read about all the time, and they were heroes of mine as well.
Okay, let's move on to image number 3, which is very different, as you'll see. It's called Mum and Dad, and obviously a very personal image and a very brave crop.
Brave crop, personal image. It's one of the first times I started working on projects. And the project for this was motivated by the fact that I didn't know much about studio lighting, and I wanted to learn, and how best to do it than try it. And I wasn't very good with people. Well, to be fair, I'm still not. But when I say not very good with people, it's actually how to deal with them when they're in front of your camera. So the project was inspired by that, but also I thought about it later, and I thought, well, I wanted to take pictures that mean something to me and have a photographic bent to them, have something, why they exist, basically, because I think all photographers have pictures that are important to them. There's an emotional link, basically. And these photographers have their pictures on their phone or on their cloud nowadays. They might be in a snapshot in your wallet, wherever they might be. But what I thought, well, what I want to do is actually show photographers maybe that they should take pictures that have an emotional value, because these pictures are the most valuable to take. Actually do it with your photographic talent imposed on top of it. So not just snapshots, but proper pictures, if you like, where you've actually inputted a great deal and you've learned something as well, but actually have a meaning to you. So I started with my family. I opened up to my friends. Then I did colleagues as well. My living room became a studio for several months. I did move the studio around as well. All these pictures were shot on a Bronica SQA camera, which is a medium format camera. And yeah, I look at this now. My mum's still around. She's in her home. My dad has passed, but I look at this now and I still remember them so vividly. So these are they're snapshots, but with a strong photographic element. So this is one of my early projects, my friends and family.
Now the next image, called Penguin, was on a freebie trip abroad to Antarctica. And you told me this is one of your favorite images. So what's the story behind this one?
Yeah, I am lucky. I do get the odd freebie trip, but not all of them is quite as good as this, where we do get to go to Antarctica. It was at Christmas 2003. And this has got significant in various ways, but the key one for me was, it was the first time I went on the trip with film and digital cameras. And I came back with all the good pictures being on digital. I literally went to Antarctica with a bag full of film. It must have been 200 rolls of Fujifilm Velvia, loads of black and white. I must have 200 rolls of film, and I came back and maybe haven't exposed maybe 10. but I've got thousands and thousands of digital pictures. And on this occasion with the penguin, we got off the boat, because that's what you do when you go to Antarctica. You decant to Zodiac boats, these smaller boats, and you roar around looking for pictures. And I was in a photography boat. And what they did was they communicated to each other on radio. And if somebody saw something interesting, they tell everybody else, and then all these boats would head towards the area of interest. So I was in this boat, and the lady driving it saw this penguin, and actually there were two penguins on this huge iceberg. And she headed over. I thought, great. But then she also radioed her colleagues, and I thought, oh God, we're going to have 10 boats zooming in towards these two penguins. And yeah, perhaps stupidly, but I did stand up in this boat tearing towards the iceberg. And this, bearing in mind, we're talking about the Antarctic here. And I had a Canon EOS 10D with 100 to 400 millimeter zoom. And I stood up and I squeezed off 2 pictures, and then the penguins jumped into the water and they went. So by the time all these other boats turned up, they had gone, but I had the picture, so I was very, very happy.
Great picture. Let's take the slide away now. So you were the only one to get that picture.
Absolutely, to get one like that and that cropped. And the thing is about it also, it was a first digital trip. It was a 6 megapixel camera, and now we're using cameras of, there's a Sony at 61 megapixels. But I still get A2 size prints off that RAW file. Awesome what you could do. But
you should have become a news photographer for a newspaper or something.
I'll be too scared, Peter. I don't have the adrenaline rush. I don't have the gumption in the front, I'm afraid.
Well, now you've been to one of your favorite locations, Applebee Horse Fair, quite a few times. And this next image, called Applebee Blonde, is again a tight crop and the sort of image a lot of people would not have taken. What can you tell us about this one?
Well, just to explain with Applebee, I started going up there in 2006, I think it was. And I've been going regularly since. I mean, maybe I've been 10 or 12 times, only for a day or two at a time. And I've made it a project, and it's a black and white project, as you can see. And the thing about the Applebee Horse Fair, if people haven't been there before, is that in the middle of the town where the River Eden flows through, is that the people who turned up with horses wash them in the river. So the place is just stinking of fairy liquid, and that's there to enjoy, by the way. And they walk down to the riverbed, down a ramp, onto the riverbed, because obviously for the safety reasons. And I used to just stand there and just watch what was coming down. And I saw this horse come down, being led by this blonde, and so I stalked her. I knew there's a picture there. I kind of already in my head had a pre-visualization of it. It's not as simple as that, of course, because Applebee Horse Fair, there are thousands of people there, not just photographers, but just people. And so it's a real challenge getting a picture. But as I said, I stalked it. I hung around, wait for her to look the right way, watching the horse all the time in terms of the background. And I was often just clicking, or, I just concentrate on what I'm doing. And I was lucky enough to get what I want. Doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's a great feeling, and it's still one of my favorite pictures from Applebee. But like I say, it's a project that's ongoing, not this year, sadly, because of the lockdown, but hopefully I'll be back next year.
Let's come off the slide now. And I was interested there, Will, you used the word stalk twice. Is that what you do in your street photography?
Well, I think I do. I mean, I'm quite open about it as well. I think photographers could learn from doing that a bit more, and just stalking and obsessing about it a bit more. Because I think photographers, when they turn up at a scene or see a picture in their mind, they go, yep, I know what I want. And they think, click, 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 I've got it. But actually, more often than not, I would argue they haven't. So I do stalk, I do linger, and I do obsess, and I try and work hard at it to try and get the ultimate picture before I move on. Doesn't always work, because sometimes, it's not going to happen. Sometimes I'm there for work and I can't do it. But yeah, I do stalk subjects. I see a picture in my head, and I'll hang around. And sometimes I don't do very well because I do stand out. I sometimes wear loud shirts. I'm Chinese, so I look different. And I have a bag full of cameras sometimes, but I do try and stalk subjects, and I think a lot of people could learn from actually just slowing down and going, before they move on, have I got that? Have I truly got that to the very best of my ability? If I have, move on. If I haven't, hang around. You never know.
I'm glad you said that about your shirts. I couldn't have done. Now the next one, Westminster Bridge, is from photo 24, obviously taken on a very rainy morning. it's got a sort of film look to it, which really couldn't have been achieved without the rain, could it?
No, absolutely. I look at this and you know what, and I still smile. Because it was one of my favourite pictures of the year. And just to explain now, I own Photography News, and hence, by the way, this self-portrait of me up here, which I did earlier today, because we had a podcast challenge to do a self-portrait. So I was just laying in the garden in a loud shirt in a patch of daisy. But the point of Photo 24 was I came up with the idea and I thought, wouldn't it be great just to have this day of photography? It would be on the longest day of the year, around the Midsummer's Day, around June the 21st. And so the first one was in 2013. We started on a Friday at 6 o'clock in the evening. We had a hotel briefing, so we had about 150 readers. And we had a program mapped out. So this is where we can meet up and just exchange views and do stuff. But some people, to be fair, I didn't see them for 24 hours. They were at the briefing and they were at the end, literally 24 hours later. And they showed me their step counters. Some of them have done, I don't know, 25,000 steps. They've been walking all night long. But that wasn't the point. The whole thing of it was, with Photo 24, was that people would come along for an hour, 2 hours, or whatever. The point of this picture was, it was taken at 20 to 5 in the morning, if you can see Big Ben's clock. And we were walking around the West End with my colleagues still. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning, it started to rain. And the boss had kindly provided us a hotel so that we could, we were working, so we could, have a tidy up and a freshen up if we wanted to. And my colleague said, well, it's raining, we're going back. And I go, well, I'm going down to the bridge. And they go, well, why? I said, well, on this document I've got here, which I could put together, it says here, sunrise shoot, Westminster Bridge, 4:30. So I walked down to the bridge in the pouring rain. I wasn't fully prepared. There was no, at the time, London night tube or anything untoward like that. So I walked down to the bridge, and it was still pouring down with rain. And sure enough, there were no readers. It's 4:30. This is now 20 to 5. But I got a picture to me which sums up so much of this country. I've got the palaces of Westminster in the background. I've got a black cab. I've got rain. I've got some modern British lads in the foreground. Even got a London bus in the background. I've got one frame. And in 2013, my favourite picture, without doubt.
As you say, you've got to work hard at these things, haven't you?
You've got to accept the fact that we don't always get perfect light. People, I do hear it, oh, it's not sunny, I'm not going out. Or it's raining, I'm not going out. Go out. These are the times when you get pictures that are different from everybody else's. They're great times to take pictures. And even though I've got a camera which is not it's not weather sealed, I will still go shoot it, because you just put the thing underneath your jacket or put a polythene bag over it. Just carry on shooting. We are in such a brilliant age at the moment where we can shoot 24/7, handheld if we want, because the modern ISO performance of cameras is just awesome.
Well, let's move on to the next one, which is again street photography. You call this Mona Lisa. Now, you said you don't ask permission, you stalk people and snap away, but you are a bit obsessed with umbrellas, aren't you?
Well, I'm obsessed with umbrellas.
Oh, sorry, this is Mona Lisa, isn't it? Yeah.
No, so I'm obsessed with all sorts of cameras. This is another project where I photograph people using their cameras, I photograph people using their phones, and I photograph people using their tablets. And this was obviously in the Louvre in Paris, taken a few years ago, so before the terrorist problem, so I'm not sure what the situation is nowadays. But I went there and I wanted to see the Mona Lisa, although oddly enough, I actually didn't see the Mona Lisa, I saw it through other people's cameras. But there were so many people photographing themselves in front of her. So I just hung back a little bit. I had a 50mm lens, the 1.8, and I just stood there photographing people, photographing the Mona Lisa. And when I saw this picture, for instance, where the focus detect box is on the Mona Lisa, I thought, brilliant. And that's what I want. And it's a project of mine, and this is the sort of photography I love.
As I said, you're also obsessed with umbrellas, and the next one shows some umbrellas. I like the repeated colours here.
Yeah, I mean, I get asked, Peter, in my business, in terms of how do I improve my photography, and I always say to people, have your camera on, have it around your neck. And when people would say, well, the battery would go flat, we'd go, oh, I'll just have a spare. But be ready to take pictures. Have your camera out, you have the right ISO set, you don't have the self-timer on, you have the right mode, and you're ready to go because your brain's in gear. So, I recognize it's not always possible for many people, but I try and do it wherever I can. And this is walking down Charing Cross Road in London. And it's a great location this for the phone boxes. And I was photographing them. And I was photographing umbrellas because it was raining. And this umbrella stopped. It was wonderful. There was no logo on it, so it suited me. And I started photographing it. And then suddenly, I realized, hang on a minute, what's that lady in the background? Somebody's walking to the picture. The coat the same colour as the umbrella. Her trousers the same colour as the umbrella. She's even got kind of a white bag. She's got blonde hair. Everything fell into place. Did I plan it? Of course I didn't. Would it happen again if I tried it? Probably not in the month of Sundays. So it's up being prepared to take pictures and reacting to what's going on and being aware of what's going on. So it's having your brain not in neutral, but in third or fourth gear or even more.
Now, if we move to the next image, which shows the Docklands Light Railway, this is your current project. And just to prove how passionate you are, how many stations are there in the DLR and how many have you actually photographed?
Well, it's got 24 stations, 24 stations. It's got 25 miles of track and 45 stations. And I've been doing this now since 2016, so it's about 3 years. I was inspired by a guy called Mark Mason, who wrote a book called Walking the Lines, or Walk the Lines. And it was he walking the tube overground, because of course you can't walk underground. And it was a book, it's a narrative book, it wasn't a picture book. But when I read it, I was so inspired by it, because he found out so much history of London by walking the underground on the overground way. And I thought, what can I do? Now, I'm not a train enthusiast, but my idea was to do the DLR, which has got only 24 miles of track. For me, it's kind of manageable and walkable. It's not too far for me to get to London. I'm an hour away. I get to the DLR and my ticket covers me for all the travel on the DLR on that day. And the aim was to try and take a decent picture of every station, at least one decent picture in the locality, and then some pictures of the DLR as it moves around. And this was, well, you can see the scene. It's the O2 arena in the background. There are people climbing it. I've got the DLR train in the foreground. I've got the Emirates airline cable car in the background. Great lighting. It's still ongoing, but my projects, I'll be ending this soon because I'm getting tired of it, I suppose. Like I said, I've done all 45 stations, but I still need to work at some of the stations because some stations are more photogenic than others. If you go to Canary Wharf, you get off Canary Wharf and you walk around and think, this is awesome. You can spin around in a circle and take a good picture there. But there's some stations, I can name Cyprus. There's a station there, you get off there, you think, what on earth? King George V is another one. Beckton is another station I have not got a good picture of, but you go to Beckton, you get off the train, you walk off the platform, you look across the road, there's a funeral home, a funeral director's across the way. Ahead of you, there's a bus station, and to the right, there's an Asda. Have I got a good picture there? No. So the idea is for me, even though I'm not a train enthusiast, is just to try get good pictures wherever I go. So if I do turn up at some of these stations where there's not much to photograph, I'll work hard and do my damnedest to get something good. And that's part of the obsession thing in me again. So this is my latest project, and it probably will finish soon. And that's purely because I'm getting road weary about it.
Now, another project of yours is Piers, and this shows Lowestoft South, but you are obsessed, aren't you? The Lowestoft South Pier, but obviously it's far from the traditional image of a pier. It's a working pier, got a lamppost slap bang in the middle. So what's important about this one? Well,
I had any number of pier pictures to include. According to the National Pier Society website, there are 57 working piers. I've now done 51 of them. So I'm getting towards the end, and there is a finite end to this project because of the numbers. Although that said, there are some piers that have changed even since I photographed them. Felixstowe, for example. But the thing is with piers is you go up there, and some of these piers I did research on the websites beforehand to see what it were, and so I had an idea what it was. But some piers, there isn't much because they're just not that interesting. Now, if you go, if you Google search Cleveland Pier or Brighton Pier or Eastbourne or Southend, you get loads of stunning images. South Pier at Lowestoft, it's just this concrete thing sticking out. It's really quite skanky down there. It's not very salubrious at all. And when I turned up in the first place, I thought, am I in the right place? And that's why I took this picture, because it just proved I was actually in the right place. And there are two piers in Lowestoft. There's one down there, a couple of miles down the road. There are 2 in Yarmouth. I can't say I enjoyed photographing them, but I've got some good work from all 4. It does mean I don't have to go to Yarmouth or Lowestoft again. No offence to people who live at those places or come from those places. But that's one thing about the project. It has got me to places that I've never been there before. I probably never want to go back. But they've been fun, and I've done 51 piers so far. Like I said, I've got 6 to do. So hopefully with a year or so, I'll end the project. At the moment, my pictures are black and white, but who's to say how they'll turn out? They might be colour. Some are long exposures, some are filtered, some are candid, some are detail shots. Because I used to spend like a day or 2 at each pier. So it seemed rather fun. So it's a good project. I've really enjoyed this one.
Okay, let's come off that slide then, because I can say now that we're going to be opening the chat line for everyone. So if you have a question for Will, please type it in and we'll see it on the chat line, and we'll try to answer as many as we can. Now, you mentioned the word joy there. Do you think for many people the fun, the joy has gone out of photography these days?
I think one thing about photography, what it's done is it's made it very democratic, and it's easy to have fun now without incurring cost. So I think once you've got the kit, you can have a great deal of fun. But I think what I've done is, and the reason I have so many projects, is I give myself reasons to take pictures, because I am an amateur. I don't have any stock library commitments. I do not enter competitions. And sure, some of my work I publish in a magazine, but to get me off my backside is give myself projects, give myself things to do. And some of my projects are literally, they can be a 2-hour project at a beach I turn up at when the weather's not very good. It might be I go somewhere and I think, in this 10 square meters, I'm going to take 10 pictures. So I give myself that sort of thing all the time. And it's because I want to have fun. I spend a lot of money on my hobby. I spend a lot of time on my hobby. And that, it's not a very cool word, I know, but it's my hobby. It's the only thing I'm good at. So I'm going to enjoy it. And I think people should, not worry about what people think about them or think about their work. Just indulge themselves, enjoy what they're doing. And if they don't get recognition from their peers, what the hell? As long as their hobby, they've enjoyed it. It's a bit like when if somebody goes fishing, and I fish occasionally, I can come back and I don't catch anything, but I've had a great day on the bank and I've had a couple of beers and caught a bit of sun. It's doing it. And I think with photography, some people have got so entrenched in trying to please people, maybe they just ease off a bit and start pleasing themselves. That's what I would think anyway. That's my philosophy.
Very good advice. Now, your greatest obsession at the moment, of course, is Venice, where you tramp the streets at night. How many times have you been to Venice recently? Well,
in the last 18 months, I've been 3 times with photo friends. The last 2 times with my partner, Annie. And she's a nature photographer, so I've dragged her around the streets of Venice where there isn't a great deal of nature, but she loves it too. It's her favourite location in the world. We were due to go in April, so I've got 3 projects going there. One is shooting gondoliers in an environment, very difficult to explain, but that's one project going on at the moment. Another one is photographing tourists, very different there now, I guess, particularly Oriental tourists, because they turn up at St. Mark's Square. And they're really excited by this place. And I've been trying to document that. And my 3rd project is Venice at night. Now, photographers, when they go, well, anybody, if they go to Venice, they'll wander the streets at night taking pictures. So I thought I'd do it and do it properly. So when Annie and I have been, we start 10 o'clock, we have dinner around 9 o'clock. We gear ourselves up and let the hotel know we're going out. We're going to be back in the early hours. And we tramp the streets. It's a real safe city. It's really pedestrian friendly, obviously. So now I've got a map of Venice, which I've got a photograph on with lots of red spots. So all the red spots indicate where I've got a picture I'm happy with. So in some areas it's very measle-like. In other areas it's just the odd red spot. And I was due to go in April, but of course we didn't because of the lockdown. But I'm loving Venice at night. So I've been tramping the streets with a tripod. And I've been using my Fujifilm GFX 50R camera for all these shots. And I'm desperate to go back to finish the project. But yes, Peter, to answer your question, it is my latest obsession. And I love it. What you can do there is just awesome. And I haven't really got into the skin of the project yet because I haven't experienced all types of weather. But, I've got time.
You certainly have. Well, let's come off that slide now and start with the questions, if you're okay with that, Will.
Sure, absolutely.
The first one is, are you still a member of a camera club? And if so, why?
I did belong to Peterborough for a short time, but I couldn't get into it because various issues. It was very difficult, and I've moved away from Peterborough now. There is a local group where I am in Camborne, and I belong to that. It's a very informal group. It's a bunch of people who are very keen. They just turn at the local hotel and we talk pictures. If I had more time, I probably would join a camera club, because I think I've got things to give back. But right now, it's too difficult with work and everything else I've got going on, because I am still working. I'm trying to exercise and trying to enjoy my life as well. So I don't belong to a camera club currently, but I think they can do so much for people who want to learn about photography. And you know, there are so many skillful members in these clubs who are happy to give their information and give their time.
You mentioned in passing you're editor of Photography News, but of course that does go to 500 very large camera clubs, photographic retailers and so on. So that must take up quite a bit of your time.
Well, it's just a full-time job, and I enjoy it. And you know, it's quite difficult because, you know, the working situation has changed so much. I mean, it's amazing, because going back to my years when I was editing practical photography, I had a team, an editorial team. I had a technical editor, I had a features editor, I had a deputy editor, I had a production editor.
The good old days.
The good old days when we had resources.
Yeah.
And now, of course, the way things are is that, because we can, I suppose, that the bosses say to you, well, you can do all that. So it keeps me busy, but it's great, because I love cameras, I love using kit, I love photography. I don't love writing so much because I'm not a natural wordsmith, but hey, it gets done. So yes, I am still busy, and Annie and I have only known each other for a couple of years, so I have a relationship I'm trying to, you know, keep going as well, and still trying to enjoy life.
Well, you look as if you are. Next question: how many days of the week do you take photographs?
I think, to be honest, if you went for the literal interpretation of that question, probably every day, because I'm taking pictures of things if I'm testing a camera. During days when I'm testing a camera, usually I'll try and get out. Obviously, I can't right now. But you know, today I took this self-portrait behind me for the podcast. So I did two self-portraits actually. So I'm thinking about pictures all the time. In normal situations, probably 5 days out of 7, I'll be out with a camera, seriously taking pictures, walking around. I am one of these people, wherever I go, even if I'm going to the supermarket, I will take, in inverted commas, a proper camera, a camera in which I can change lens on. I don't rely on my phone, because I still like using a high resolution camera with an interchangeable lens, or that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm a little obsessive. I'm sorry about that.
Next question: do you still do darkroom work?
I don't, but my enlarger is in the garage, and my print washers are in the garage, my dev trays are in the garage. I've still got 2,500 rolls of film upstairs, all beautifully catalogued. You know, when I retire, when I get time, my Vivitar V1, Vivitar 6 enlarger will come back out. I have no doubt about that. I'm quite a good chemical printer. I will be there again, absolutely, but not right now.
Okay, the next question: your monochrome are much more minimalist than your color images. What's the reason for that?
I think it's because of the way I see, and the way you can work with black and white. You know, black and white for me is about contrast and texture, and black and white is easier to compress texture. Color, obviously, there's more hues to play with, and some of my color work I do compress. Actually, I mean, I did a project on the Shard, the building in London, and I desaturated a lot of those pictures, and they were very cool and blue. So I do minimalist work as well with color, but my style with black and white, and I suppose that's one thing about it, I've worked on the style over the years, and that's my suggestion also to photographers is try and develop a style, wherever that might be. But mine with black and white was certainly to compress tones, and yeah, that still lives with me, I'm afraid.
Next one: did you think about doing a COVID-19 project?
I did think about going out and about and doing that, but also felt a degree of responsibility too. So I decided to stay put, and basically until yesterday, when I needed to get some petrol for my car, well, actually I needed to get petrol for the lawnmower, not the car, but I did top up the car while I was there. But my car hadn't moved for 5 weeks.
So what have you been doing during the lockdown?
I've been doing a lot of pictures at home. I mean, I've been doing a lot of water on oil and water, which is this stuff. I've been doing some water droplets. I've been working hard on my portfolio too, because I've got this huge bank of work. And I am concerned about my my legacy. That sounds a bit serious, but the thing is, if I pass tomorrow, my nephews, I don't have any children, my nephews will come into my living room and see all these hard drives and computers, all password protected, by the way. So they can't get at this stuff anyway. So I thought, well, maybe I should leave a legacy of work where if I do pass, somebody can go to this file or the cloud, wherever it might be, and get there and download all this work. And it might be pictures of my family and friends, but also my photographic work, you know, the stuff which has got some merit perhaps that somebody can enjoy. So actually I've been working hard at going through my Lightroom catalogues and just putting all this stuff into one folder. It's quite a challenge, to be fair, because I'm shooting, you know, every year I'm doing 25, 30,000 pictures and a lot of projects, and it's taken a lot of work going back in time, and the computer's working very hard.
Perhaps you should crowdfund, you know, for the Will Cheung Photographic Library. You may need a lot of money for that. Right, next question. Do you ever lack inspiration? And if so, what do you do to overcome it? Doesn't sound like you do.
No, the thing is, I do lack inspiration, and that's why I do projects like one when I do a camera club talk. The first thing I do is start with photographing rubbish. And sometimes I've turned up at places and you go, what the hell do you photograph? Well, my rubbish project gets around that, because there is literally rubbish wherever you go, you know, Antarctica and places like that accepted. But you walk around, you go, well, actually, what I can do is I'll photograph rubbish. So I look for rubbish. Or one of my other projects is toilets and signs and stuff like that. So wherever I go, I have a project basically in my head, and it's been ongoing for a while. You know, wheel embellishers that fall off cars, I photograph them. Discarded clothing, discarded toys, discarded food. I have all these projects. So if I go somewhere where I'm not inspired, I will start by photographing one of my projects like that. They don't have much merit. I'm not pretending they do, although Irving Penn did a great rubbish project, and people like Rankin did, and Bob Carlos Clark did too. And once I start shooting rubbish, I see pictures. It gets me, like I was saying earlier, it gets me out of neutral, where I've no inspiration, and it gets me moving through the gears, and I start seeing stuff. Doesn't always work, but often that's what I do. I give myself as many reasons to take pictures. And if I do that, then I get into the stuff I really love. But, you know, you have to be open to, you know, some photographers may not be able to do it, but I'm open to all forms of photography. I don't have a specialism. I specialize in being a non-specialist.
Good way of putting it. Now, next question. What is your favorite lens for street photography?
I'm very fond at the moment of using my Fujifilm XE3, which is a little digital camera. And the lens I use on that's an 18mm f2, because it gets me close enough. Because for my technique for street, I'm not a great street photographer. I'm quite shy and nervous. So I have my camera hanging down from my neck, and I just walk around, and I shoot often from the chest. And the 18mm lens gets me close enough. It's equivalent in 35mm frame terms to a 28mm wide angle. So I think I'll get within 3 or 4 meters. Well, 2 or 3 meters sometimes. I walk up close, I'm using the silent shutter on the camera, and I've got my thumb on the button. And one technique, if you want another bit of advice, often what I pretend to do is I'm on the phone. So I'm on the phone, but I've got my thumb on the shutter button. I'm talking to the phone. I'm not talking to anybody, but I'm going, yeah, I'll go to a minute for you, that's no problem. And I'm taking pictures the whole time. Because you can do nowadays, you know, you've got literally silent shutters. You're getting close, everybody's taking pictures, and I'm just blending in with everybody else.
Next question is someone who must obviously know you. They say, are you still doing the cemetery project?
I did do the cemetery project. It was a Magnificent Seven, which is the seven cemeteries in London, you know, like Abney Park and Brompton Road and Nunhead, Highgate. So I went to all 7. I went with an infrared converted body. I did that one spring. I did all 7 quite quickly. Enjoyed it immensely, but I've probably done that now. So I have finished that one.
And these projects, when you finish, do you print them out, or what do you do with them?
I make a lot of prints, which are for my own enjoyment. I'm not very good at self-publicity. Maybe I should try and go to a book publisher and say, here, look, I've got some of Venice or some of the piers, wherever it might be. But most of the projects I just print, I enjoy. When I do a talk, I like showing them. But there's no end goal. I mean, I'm not driven by what I want to do with them. I'm driven by wanting to go photograph them in the first place. And so, you know, going back to your point right at the beginning of our conversation, you know, what am I going to go up to next? Well, I've got two ideas. One is fine art nude using a pinhole film camera. And my other one is Victorian viaducts. Two project ideas, which could be quite large, but I haven't worked on them yet. So I just need to park my two existing ones, which is the Docklands Light Railway and the piers. And once I can park those two, I'll move on to something else.
Well,
But
that viaduct one may take you a long time.
It would take me a great deal of time. But the thing is with the viaducts ones, I'm not after the obvious ones. You know, I'm not after, for instance, Glenfinnan or the Ribble Head with it. If they are Victorian, I'm not sure they are. I'm sure people will tell me otherwise. But I want to do the more interesting ones, which are probably less picturesque and less well known and maybe more industrial. I don't know. I haven't researched it yet, but it was just something that came up in my head a while ago.
Next question. How did you feel when you got your fellowship?
Oh, God, going back a long way. I'll tell you one thing.
Well, how old were you to start with?
I was 26, because it was 1983 I got my F. And I remember when I sent my F off, the panel off, it was all mounted, best I could manage. It was all dry mounted in those days. And I sent off, I think it was 18 pictures of the East Coast. And I sent it off, and I got this parcel back a few days after the adjudication. I thought nothing more of it, although I did think, hang on a minute, when I did my A, I remember I didn't get my panel back for absolutely ages, because they published it in the journal. And I got my F back a matter of days after the adjudication. I thought, hell, I haven't got it. And when you send the submission in, you had to fill in the reply address, which is your home address, obviously. And I just looked at this parcel, and it literally sat there for a day or two, because I thought, I can't have got it. I must have failed it. How I could go again. And then I looked at the label, and this was a return label I'd written with my name and my address on it. And somebody after my name had put FRPS. I thought, wow, because I didn't do that. Somebody had kind of, that's the way I was notified. I saw the return label of the parcel, and somebody had written it. I had a drink or two that night. It was a great feeling. So I worked in a year. I know it's a year, but I worked very, very hard for it. I printed lots and lots and lots, had lots of failures. And you know what? I mean, preparing for this talk, I looked at the panel. You know, I sort of think it's quite strong for a fellow panel. I mean, it's very distinctive. Whether or not you like the pictures is another thing, but it's certainly got a distinctive style. And yes, I'd replace one or two pictures now, but you know what? I'm still quite proud of it, even after all this time.
Well, of course, that's what we look for today, a distinctive panel. So you were a fellow for 2 days before you realised it.
Yeah, I was. And I didn't get to Bath either to pick up the certificate, because I did for my A, I went down to Bath to the Octagon to pick up my certificate. For my F, I've no idea why I didn't go. I should have done, really. Very rude. Sorry.
Now, someone called Martin, who I assume knows you, he says, how many camera launches did you fall asleep at?
Quite a few. The fall asleep, it's a joke I get from my so-called friends, because being Chinese, I'm not very good with alcohol. I just can't drink. I try, but I can't drink. And if I drink a lot of red wine and have a lot of food, I just nod off, and I still do it. And it just shows, and by the way, that it's not just me saying this. I remember seeing a TV program but with Dr. Robert Winston, and he said it's in our genes. We genetically oriented people largely cannot drink. And so I used to go to these launches, drink lots and lots of free beer, because that's the amazing thing with journalists. You turn up with these dudes and you just get nice food and nice wine. And I certainly imbibed, certainly when I was young, I imbibed a lot, because it was the novelty of it being free was amazing. I'm much calmer nowadays. I can actually pace myself now, and I managed, thank you, Martin, to not fall asleep in press conferences.
Right, here's a good one. What tips would you give your younger self when you first started out? What
I'm
tips
assuming
would you
this
give
is in
them?
photography, not in life, because there are a million tips I give about life. But in photography, just listen to what people are saying to you. You know, because, you know, people said to me early doors, you know, move your feet. You know, when you're taking a picture, think about your viewpoint. Don't shoot everything from standing high. You know, maybe move left, move right, go low, try a high viewpoint. And it took me a while for stuff like that to sink in. But listen to what's around you and be inspired and open to what's around you. Don't close things off. And one thing I did, again, early doors was do my own sweet thing and not listen enough to what other people were doing, what people were producing. And that, if I had the chance again, I would be more open, and maybe I wouldn't be a black and white specialist. I may be a color photographer, and maybe I'll be doing different things as well. Maybe I should be doing teaching more, for instance, because, you know, I'm not a natural born teacher, but maybe, you know, I would say now, look, maybe try and you know, go to college and learn how to be a teacher, because being able to actually talk about my technique and passing my knowledge on now, it's great. It's wonderful. I love it.
Final question. Can you actually teach people to see an image?
To a degree, I think you can. We all have different visions. And certainly when I've been with groups, I talk about, we can turn up at a location and I can do something and people do their own thing. We go away and then we may come back later, maybe meet at a pub or see each other online virtually by showing each other's pictures. And I've had it when people say to me, where did you see that? I go, well, it was so-and-so. And it is difficult. You can sometimes take a horse to water, and try as you might, they might not drink. But equally, some people will go, I hear you, I see what you're trying to do. I'll now interpret my own way. I'm not sure I've answered that question very well, but I think you can teach people to see. Whether you can teach people to be good photographers in what they see, that's a more difficult challenge, I think.
Well, Will Cheung FRPS, we're really grateful for a fantastically informative and entertaining evening. So thank you very much for joining us. And next week we have the architectural photographer, Iñaki Hernandez Lassa. We'll be talking about his work, especially his fellowship panel featuring the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao. And the following week, we'll be joined by David Noten, the well-known travel and landscape photographer. Now, if you're not a member of the RPS but would like to join, we have a special offer for you. That's on the screen now, and you can see it there. So thank you to everyone who's been with us, and goodbye from everyone at the Royal Photographic Society.